I think we've definitely seen a leveling out. And I think one of the things that we've internally kind of seen is we've had some big projects going on. And so we've been able, I say that we've kind of seen some good pricing, but we've also had a lot of scale on our pricing. We haven't had a lot of one-off type things. I mean, we've had a property where we had to replace 100 HVAC. So it's a lot easier to say, hey, we're going to give you a job for 100 units to go do that than it is, hey, I need to replace an emergency HVAC, where all of a sudden they're picking up and trying to fit you in with all of their other jobs. Yeah. And so they've got to increase the price and all that. Whereas like, hey, I've got jobs for the next 2 months. I'm not worried about where my next deals are going to come from. I'm working for you guys. And so we have a little bit of power on pricing there. So we've seen that specifically on day-to-day operations here more so than maybe we've seen in previous years.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I did talked to Joe yesterday about, they're putting in new refrigerants now. There's going to be a new refrigerant law, and that means that all these HVAC units.
I said we finalized the switch from R22s to 410As, and now they're changing it again.
Jeez. All right, great. That's just great. So all the juice that runs your HVACs, it seems like they change them every 10 years. And I like that the new stuff is. This is my joke that I was saying yesterday. It's like the new stuff is more flammable, but it's less pollution. So it's like it's concentrating all of that pollution and risk. Things are going to get really hot, really close to it if it explodes, but it's safer for the general environment. So it's global warming or really hot warming right there. But no, I think that's a factor. I think that asset managers are probably tracking, right? And man, it seems like some of the biggest costs for apartment units are air conditioning and just maintaining those, and it's really important. Obviously, that's you can't. It's expensive too.
Well, and I think there's a lot of costs. I mean, to say one of Joe's famous sayings is, it's really expensive to not know what's going on.
Exactly.
And one of the things that we've struggled with specifically is because of wage growth. I think we've taken a while kind of on the operations to understand how that factors into employees at our sites and understanding where that's taking people and being able to hire good people in the industry. And so when you're hiring new people, that means you don't have people on site. So that means you're subcontracting out a lot more work. You're trying to be the lowest priority for someone and pay to be the highest priority. And when you're constantly doing that, it's kind of an uphill battle. Once you have scale, once you have a stable workforce and you're working on those things, then all of a sudden you can see what the real numbers are. But as you said, an asset manager, it's their job to know which level are you in. And I would say we were in a period where we were growing and kind of getting our systems in place. Now that we kind of have those systems in place and we're seeing what kind of that recurring job force does to help our properties, I think it really gives us a clearer picture.
No, that's a good point. You reminded me about, I'm pulling up the jobs report now, about how relevant labor is, and how relevant labor is not only just the cost of it, but like to keep people that are trained and to, and to keep the quality people and to make sure that there's not turnover. And just it's hard. that was one thing that I got out of my conversations with Joe yesterday. Is it's a difficult thing because sometimes the turnover is difficult, and sometimes it is just it's difficult to find someone. Period, and it's hard to manage a lot of people in these different sites. So it's labor and specifically, I think talent is worthwhile. It's worth paying for. Right?
And I think Joe. I wish we had Joe here to talk to this.
I know.
We talked about this too. And one of the things that people have always kind of said in the apartment industry is there's kind of this correlation between construction jobs and maintenance jobs. Of like when construction's really, really high, those maintenance guys are going to go search for those construction jobs and try to get that a little bit more. When those jobs aren't as plentiful, then a lot of those guys are like, well, what can I do with my skill set? I can run maintenance on apartments. But Joe's really good about talking about like, the same guy that you have that's framing your house is not the same guy that's going to be coming and fixing your HVAC. So we kind of generalize like, oh yeah, these construction guys are going to come do that. But there is a specific skill set that's required in that that we have to factor in. It's like, oh, we can't just take any guy off a construction site that's looking for a job and put them on our property and expect that they're going to be able to get the job done.
And again, that was exactly what I was thinking of. He described to me a project that he did have. He went in and they, he had to go and manage these apartments, and he kind of specialized people. He's like, I'm going to train you for drywall. I'm going to train you for this kind of construction thing. I'm going to train these guys on maintenance. and never the two shall meet. I don't think it was that separate, but it was very much important to keep the maintenance going, to make sure that they're not trying to turn an apartment, that they are like actually maintaining things as they go and not trying to bleed into construction, and also conversely that the construction projects keep going and they're not trying to dip out and turn their fix a AC unit or something like that. So I think the specialization and that leads into that kind of training, and it's sad because if you lose someone that did have that training, or if Joe, as Joe mentioned, like maybe they forget training, which is, I think it's all. I do think though, with management anywhere, anytime, it's about spinning plates. You just have to check up on people. You have to make sure that they're accountable. You have to make sure not only that they're working hard, but they're working right. I've seen this description that Joe has said of like, you can spend 2 hours fixing an AC unit. You're working the whole time, but if it only really needs 15 minutes, then that's fine. Or what he said yesterday, he was like, I had a guy that was making sure that this turn unit was pristine. Every, it was like a Da Vinci painting. Now this is me, but it was like, that unit was good enough. Like a couple hours ago, that you need to know when good enough is good enough so that you can do more with other apartments. So it's the standards, it's the things that you're looking for, and I keep thinking too about like, the $2 part versus the $2,000 AC unit. So that's really important. But just to kind of zoom right back out to jobs in general, I have this jobs report here, and we've got, it was positive. A lot of people got pretty excited about this, or not excited if you're someone that's looking for lower interest rates, I guess. But they did go down. Unemployment numbers went from 4.3 to 4.1. That's great. I don't know. What was your take on the jobs report?
I mean, I think we kind of knew that jobs have been good. I mean, if we're looking even internally here of like, okay, trying to fill jobs, we can have postings up for a long time and maybe not get the candidates that we want. So I think we know that people have jobs. I think where I've kind of been wondering is like at a certain point, like we're growing jobs a lot every month, and at some point, how do we continue to grow jobs? Like,
I know.
If unemployment is 3% and we're chipping away and it's lower each month and we're growing jobs, like at a certain point, like it's got to go back the other way. And so maybe we're close to an equilibrium, but I think at some point, I mean, we can create jobs, but if we're creating jobs, we're also probably losing jobs at some point. I think the best example of that would be the strike that we saw for the longshoremen. I mean, they had that strike basically to ensure that they didn't lose their jobs to automation.
I had that pegged the minute that strike started. I was like, they're going to figure a way out of it because it's too close to an election to have that just dangling out there. But and so
like those are jobs that were kept, but those are jobs that could potentially go away in the future. And so I think really understanding kind of where the cheese is moving to when it comes to the jobs that people actually have and the jobs that people need. Because when I was thinking about the jobs report, all I'm hearing is about all of this call back to work and like, hey, basically they're making people come back into work, whether it's Dell, whether it's Amazon. And it's basically like essentially a soft layoff because they know there are people that aren't going to want to come back in. So they're just letting people say, hey, you can go if you're not going to come back into the office. And so we do hear about some of those jobs, but then on the same time, ask anyone who is looking for a contractor on their house or some sort of plumber or electrician, hey, I'm booked 3 days out. I'm booked 2 weeks out. And so I think understanding where the job creation is coming from, is it in white collar office jobs, like an Amazon, like a Dell, like all of those things, or is it more blue collar in the trades, and understanding kind of where those changes are coming from?
No, that's good. I just thought it was worth noting here. I didn't have a full write up for it, but this is the chart that has scared me in the past. Just looking at the patterns, and I referenced this on a previous episode of the Gray Report. What I wanted to do was show my kids this chart and say, okay, if you follow this pattern, what do you think is going to happen next? Because it always seems like it goes down and then it goes up, and it goes down and it goes up, and why wouldn't it go up again? And I know that there are points where it doesn't. There was a point. Let's look here. It does seem like this point in the 60s, or maybe, this point in the 90s, perhaps. Like there are times when it didn't always, where unemployment didn't always spike right back up after a period of being low, but it's hard to argue against like 50 plus years of this cycle in which once unemployment goes up a little, it tends to spike up a lot. And I don't know, obviously pandemic is different. Obviously the changes in unemployment that we saw during the pandemic, look at this spike and we've referenced again before, in April 2020 has, that was huge, but still, like I keep coming back to are we at the start of a more difficult period? I don't know.
And I think one thing to kind of look at specifically with this, and I think the spike in 2020 really does kind of make it real hard to really gauge. But if you look at that and you trend it, you take out that spike, that is a very long trough at the bottom of that graph compared to where it's been in other times.
That's a good point. Yeah. So if it does go up, it could be more of a hill. If you just eliminate that spike, it didn't really go down. It's more gradually, and it could have like bottomed out in between this gap, But yeah, no, and I remember you mentioning this was years ago, during the early moments of the pandemic where like we were maybe due for a recession in like late 2019.
And if you look at anything that's ever happened with the jobs, like obviously 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, obviously that correlates with something. Well, if you look at every time on that graph that we have job loss, it's during a recession.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about, hey, is this going to be a soft landing? Is it going to be a recession? Is it going to be a technical recession that we don't really feel too much?
Yeah.
Like what are those aspects? And I think once we see if we do kind of fall into any of those categories, do we get the soft landing and that's much more leveled out? Do we actually get it? Even if it's technical, is that number going to shoot back up? Because if we're looking at it, every time that we have a recession, that's where the pop is.
Yeah. That's going to be it'll be really interesting. I think that we are in what did J. Powell say? We're flying by the stars and sailing by the moon. I don't know. I'll have that quote ready in the notes. But we're sailing we're navigating by the stars under cloudy skies. And they said that in like 2022, and I think that the skies have cleared up a little bit, but it's making me nervous. I can see something on the horizon that I don't like, and I hope that it's just a passing thing. But I'm just, my worries have not eliminated yet. However, like I remember, and this was actually a comment from Paul Fiorella, who is a friend of the Gray Report and has been on here a couple times. It was about the economy, and he was noting rightly, economists were predicting a recession for the past 2 years. Yes, a recession is always going to occur, but they were wrong. And those people that predicted a recession in like 2022 or 2023, they may be sitting pretty right now and be like, well, yeah, but it's going to come. Well, yeah, I know I was wrong, but it's going to come. It's like, yeah, but you were wrong. And that's millions of dollars that people may have bet on or may not have bet on if they were really trusting it.
I think the one thing I would counter that with, though, specifically, is we've always known that the indicator of the recession is, because we've been inverted on the yield curve for 2 years. And I think that if I'm projecting on what they're thinking.
No, that was what it was
about.
As soon as
it uninverts, we know that we're going into it.
Yeah.
And I think it just took longer to uninvert than what people thought.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it is. Because I don't think they're wrong. Every time we've seen them uninvert, like history has shown us, every time it's uninverted, we've gotten a recession.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what they're saying. But I do agree that it was 2 years that we were inverted, where usually it's a much shorter cycle of being inverted.
Yeah. No, I agree that it's like something is extended, and I don't know whether the pain is going to be extended now, like if it's unemployment or whatever. However, I do think that the investment prospects could be really good.